So, welcome Dan and Jen to the Wisdom and the Akasha from the Akasha podcast. I am ridiculously excited. I've been looking forward to this since you agreed to do this episode with me because Dan and I have known each other for quite a long time now. We met when Dan and I did a swap for each other, didn't we? If you remember back
That's
in the
right.
day, because I wanted to find a medium who I could trust to refer people to. And I was kind of working my way through people, and I wanted to be able to experience it for myself. I have had a number of mediumship readings over the years. I think I probably said on the podcast before, my nana was a big fan. Dan knows my nana well. She is a big fan of mediumship, psychic work, and all of that. So from a very young age, I was kind of exposed to the world of mediums and psychics. But because of that as well, I also knew there were some amazing mediums out there and some not so amazing mediums and some
Unfortunately, that is a fact. Yes.
yeah, and it's the same with every industry. And what I found a lot is with people coming for Akashic Records readings, yes, sometimes their loved ones can come through, but usually it's only to kind of say, hi, we're here, it's okay. What I was finding is that people would reach out to me and they would say, I've had this Akashic Records reading, it was great, but I'd also really like a medium. So who could I refer them to? So Dan and I did a service swap where I did an Akashic reading for Dan, Dan did a mediumship reading for me. And then when I was a little bit scared of going on to Instagram live by myself, I put a shout out on my stories and just said, would someone like to come and interview me? And Dan, for better or for worse, volunteered himself to come along and just ask me questions, and we had the best time. And we would sit and chat
So
for
much fun.
hours on Instagram about all sorts of different things until such time as I was confident to be able to do it myself. So, for those of you listening, I will say quite happily, recommendation wise, Dan and also Jen, who's here as well, are amazing at what they do. They hold such a beautiful space for their clients, because when clients come in for mediumship work, as I'm sure they'll get into today, you're often in a state of grief. You're often going through a lot emotionally, and having someone who can hold that space for you, as well as get you the guidance and the connection that you're looking for, is extremely important. So I just wanted to say at the outset, if you listen to this episode and you think I'd love to work with these two, please, please do. Recommendation comes from me. So if you two want to introduce yourself, I can stop talking for once and tell us what it is that you are doing, what you're focusing on at the moment. I'm sure my listeners would love to hear.
Well, thank you. Well, first of all, Susie, thank you so much. It's a great honor to be asked onto your podcast. And yeah, we've known each other a long time. And I remember, do you know what? I never realized that you didn't have the confidence to go on by yourself, because you just bring so much calm, lovely energy with you. You made me feel really relaxed when we were doing those episodes. And
I was gonna say you left that part out because when he's told me the same story, but I'm like, you didn't tell me she was not confident about it. It sounded like you were like just a rock
I
star.
thought, yeah.
So I'm like, wait, Dad, thanks for not giving me the details.
And so much. I mean, if it's all right for me to go into just a little bit of a history about it as well. I always called Susie my Obi-Wan, right, on the spiritual journey, because from a mediumship we work in obviously different frequencies, and when I was on this journey, I've gone on and discovered so many more things about working in mediumship. But you really helped me with my greater, wider spiritual understanding of how all this stuff works. And because I had so many questions, and there were so many people who worked in mediumship that were mentors of mine that couldn't answer them. And I'd move on from one to another to another. And I'd obviously have my own meditations and sit with spirit and ask questions and work out and develop a way of working with spirit, which we can go into in a moment. But you really helped me put all these things together. And then we obviously introduced each other to different people like Joe, who did past life regression, I remember, and she did I remember, yeah, she did an amazing past life regression for you, didn't she? And yeah, where it was like you were on another planet or something, and it was quite it was incredible. And yeah, it was the you and the past life regression that showed me how all this thing fit together. I knew there were spirits, right? Because I've been seeing them since I was a child. So I knew there was something after this life. What that was, I didn't know. The stuff that was in the Bible didn't resonate with me in terms of it didn't fit with the narrative of my life. And because I was seeing things, people were fearful of it. I didn't know what to think myself. Sometimes I was fearful of it, although most of the time I felt quite safe with it. But when I realized that that other people were scared, it kind of I thought, should I be scared of this?
Yeah.
And then so I knew there was something. And then I was talking to you, and you being a very, very spiritual person and someone who I respect the most on that level. And when you told me that you because there's always this conflict between kind of spirituality and talking of spirit and God and religion and things like that. And when you told me, I thought of all spiritual people, I was at that point going, well, are they at odds? Do they sit at odds? And you went, no, no, I totally believe in God. Yeah, I love God. And I was like, really? Really? Is that because I was still on that journey? So I it kind of yeah, it bowled me over. I nearly fell off my chair. I was like, oh, right, okay. And but from that understanding, and me still, even though I totally bought into what you were saying, and it resonated with me. I was still kind of like, I still also need to get there myself. I need to understand that, and I need to be, and I'm still in that phase where, although I have met him now, or as he presented himself to me as a person when I was in a bit of spiritual trouble, and Jen, who I'm sure she'll talk about her past religious upbringing and connection with God, brought him in. And this is coming, you know, if there's people listening to this going, but hang on, this guy's a medium and he's talking about God, what's going on here, right? But she brought him in to help me out one day, and the amazing feeling of unconditional love and protection and was just mind blowing. And yet I still feel like I've gone back a couple of pages. I'm like, I don't feel worthy of that yet. I don't feel like I've done enough to achieve that, or to you know to honor the presence of a greater being. I always believed in the like the wider universe, and certainly with your help with that. But it's the importance is of how it all fits together. And I feel that this is really important, especially when I'm teaching people, because I would feel like an absolute hypocrite if I didn't have an understanding of how this worked. And I'm teaching people, as Jen does as well, and just saying to people, which is what happened to me when I was developing as a medium, which was, you know, oh, that's just how it is. I could never accept that. I had to know how things work. And being from a kind of a corporate background and a rational thinker and stuff, I had to have answers. There had to be a reason for everything, and there is a reason for everything, but we just had to find out what it was. And if people couldn't give that to me, I wasn't happy with that. I needed to find, and you gave me so many answers to questions that I had that resonated with me so deeply. I'm so grateful for you, and I think you've played a massive part in me getting to this point in my journey. So I want to thank you for that.
Oh, well, thank you. And I'm glad my pretense of being really confident on camera played, because I definitely wasn't. And I think for me, and all of my students will attest to this, I love receiving questions. I'm a projector in human design, and I learned the other day that projectors really kind of value having questions. And I think because you had so many questions, and you and I would literally just sit, you would ask questions, I'd give you my perspective, we'd talk about different things. And I think a lot of people learn from that process, you know. And I don't ever sit there and say, you know, I know everything that there is, but I'm like you, I'm again from a corporate background. I had questions. And of course, when I started to really connect into the Akashic Records, what better place? Because you literally go in there with questions, and I was forever asking different questions about things, trying to understand things. And, you know, I think we're always learning. We're always learning, we're always growing, and we're always evolving and expanding. And I think it's actually quite concerning if we get to a stage where we think we know everything. That's just ego. You know, I think the humility you need on the journey is essential. And even if you are in a position where you're teaching people, you're putting your hand back and you're helping them through the stages that you've always been through, that's great. But we all have to keep in mind, okay, but I'm still learning, I'm still growing, I'm still evolving, because there's never all the answers. You know, I'm doing a course at the moment which is helping people to kind of deepen their practice with the Akashic records. And you know, it's been fabulous. We did a class last night, but it was a case of, you know, you can still go deeper than even this. You know, there's so much that you can do with it. I'm sure that you find as well, it's important for you as a spiritual teacher to always keep that in mind of, I don't know everything, I'm always learning, I'm always growing. And students appreciate that. You know, I think it's very problematic when we have someone who puts themselves forward who says, well, I know everything and that's it. I'm not going to listen to other perspectives. I'm not going to. So thank you for that. So Jen, I want you to come forward and tell your background as well, because I have been watching you secretly on TikTok, and I say secretly, I'm not a stalker, I promise. But when I'm on TikTok, and I come across and you're doing your readings, I will sit and watch, because I love to see. I know a bit about your journey from Dan, and I love to see you now flourishing and really holding that space and doing it in such a beautiful way. So tell us your story.
Thank you. It makes me nerve-wracked just to think about you doing that.
Still watching on TikTok.
I know, it's just I have such high, like, hold you into such high regards based on what Dan has told me about you. So I'm so honored just to even be here. So thank you for inviting me as well. So I'm in a corporate background as well. I still am to this day, manage several departments. That's a whole nother side of things. I think a lot of times I'm in the math world, if you will, and but I think a lot of people underestimate that because I look like a big ditz sometimes, and that's all right. That's just me. That's who I am. But I was going through something. I had been through years and years of therapy based on I was born into a church. It was actually called the Worldwide Church of God. I think a lot of people, if they look it up, they'll see there was all kinds of stuff on it back in the day. And we literally were all over the world. And it was based on a cult like, it was like a cult like religion. I, however, flourished in that church because I was a rule follower. I just did it. And I firmly also went through a lot of childhood trauma. I did. I went through a lot. And so based on this, there was oftentimes I had experiences with spirit, but I was, first of all, I was told that that was like the devil's work, and that was things that was like, if I let that into my heart, he could take completely over. And I was petrified of any of that. So every time I had someone talking to me, or a lot of times there was someone that would lay next to me in my bed, and I know people are like, oh my God, that freaked the, but I just feared it. I feared it so much. So I shut it off completely. And then fast forward, I've always been that person that wants to help people. I'm always that person that sometimes a little too reckless. I remember I was 8 months pregnant, and I was driving my mom to her work, and I jumped out of the car in the middle of an intersection because I saw someone had collapsed in the street, but there were oncoming traffic. There was no stop sign. It was ridiculous. My mom's like, oh my God, but I mean, the pregnant, I mean, that's just who I've always been. It's not about bragging. It's about like saying, I kind of just, and I think there's so many people, including you, I bet you could say you've done something like that. I think there's so many people that actually just have this heart to want to help other people. So I went through years of therapy for various reasons. I mean, years. So I've been educated on, so many things with the human mind and how things work and why people do what they do. And then I was out in Hawaii, and just a couple years ago, and the Ukraine war was happening. And I was watching the news, and something triggered me. I felt like I was having what I would describe as a cross between like what they describe as a stroke and like a nervous breakdown. I don't, it's like I was having heart palpitations. I was seeing all the bodies laying on the ground, and it's something. And I mean, I've seen that before, so I didn't know what the heck was going on. So when I got back to the to my state, I went to my doctor. You know, I went to because I couldn't get past it. It just kept happening. It kept happening. I couldn't sleep. Like everything was going on. So anyway, fast forward to they put me on some happy pills, and that did nothing. Like nothing. I was working out too, so I was releasing those endorphins because I knew all the things to do to make sure I'm not going into psychosis. You know what I'm saying? So I was doing all the healthy things, and anyway, I just couldn't stop. And then I had barely started using TikTok. I was using it for motivation. That's why I'm under Hot Mess Mom reviews. I was out there just doing motivational stuff and doing stuff for moms and reviewing products that like you always buy and then you get duped. You know, that was what I was doing, but I didn't, I mean, I have a full-time job, right? So I'm like, what, you know, whatever. And then I was scrolling and I saw Dan, and he was on there talking about it. Just so happened, he says there are no coincidences, but it just so happened he happened to be talking about someone asked him about religion and about God. Now, I still have had a lot of, like I said, trauma based on that subject and such. However, and near death experiences, but however, I still firmly believe in God. I still believe very much in him, and I hold him, you know, to my heart every day. And Dan was talking about it, and the way that he was basically describing what he was talking to you about, where he was just kind of like, I have mixed reviews on God. Like that's what he was saying, but he was so respectful on how he was talking about it, because you could talk about, he was talking about, you know, religion was on a man-made concept. And I had already been on my journey a bit further, because once we left the church at my age of 18, that was very traumatic for me, because I'd been taught and I'd given up so much. I couldn't celebrate Christmas. I couldn't celebrate my birthday. I had my first birthday gift when I was 12 years of age. I had to sit out, you know, in school when they were doing like Christmas parties and stuff. I had to sit in the cafeteria by myself, and you know, I got made fun of like all the time, and it was all kinds of things. We couldn't talk to our loved ones from sunset to sunset, from Friday to Saturday, because that was our holy day. And anyone, including our loved ones, like our family that was outside of the church, we're not allowed to speak to. Just all kinds of crazy stuff. So I was like still trying to go on this journey of trying to understand all this. And in the meantime, I'm sitting there thinking about understanding, because I'd started watching the History Channel, and I'm going to backtrack here just for a second before I talk about Dan. So this was what I was on my journey, maybe about 6 months before I went to Hawaii. Okay, so what happened was I watched this episode on the History Channel, and it was about Moses actually, and all of the stuff about crossing. And it was the scientists and the philosophers versus the religion, and everyone was talking together. And what they were saying was that, like, for instance, when Moses parted the Red Sea, they were saying, well, actually, there's a part of that that was true. But what happened was he knew exactly what time of year the river, the Red Sea, right, shrunk down to where people could actually cross it, because it would get so narrow where it could be to like knee deep, where people could actually cross it. And he also knew when to time it when it would fill back up. So by the time the Egyptians came over, it would kill all these people. So it was things like that that I'm like, oh, what? You know, like, wow, that makes so much sense. And then, so fast forward back to Dan, he's on there and he's talking about religion being a man-made concept in several versions of the Bible, which I already knew to be true because I was doing my own research. And then I thought, okay. And then he started describing what we could be experiencing. Mm-hmm. And that was where I was like, okay, check. And I'm like, I'm going to try this out. So I signed up for his beginner course. It just so happened he was doing a beginner course. It was his first beginner course too that he'd ever done. When I joined, there was about 27 people in that class. And I can tell you, I was the only one with zero experience. I'd never touched a tarot card. thought I was going to burn in hell when I touched the tarot cards. Let me be clear. Okay. Literally thought I was going to burn up in flames. He told us, you know, in the beginning, he gives you all these rules about ethics, about conduct, about not practicing on people outside of this group. He was so strict about his rules. I liked that. He was like all about keeping us safe and the group safe, and other people safe. Like, so, you know, people thought, oh, I've taken one class with Dan, let me go practice on people. He's like, absolutely forbidden, you know. So, but one of the rules he said was, we're going to be doing intuitive tarot, very different than traditional tarot. And he goes, so I want you guys to get a, you know, just a normal deck, throw away the rule book because we're not going to learn that way. And he goes, but I want you to sleep and put your energy on these, you know, deck of cards. I was like, hell no, I'm not sleeping with that. I will burn up in flames. Like, I was, anyway. So there's so many stories I could say, but first class, he basically tested us. Actually, I guess it was the second class. First class was about like sitting in the power and learning just how to sit with yourself and how to basically open up on how to meditate and just to quiet your mind. And I was like, oh God, I am such an ADHD brain. There is no freaking way this is going to work, you know? But I was like, I'm going to try it. And he then talked to us a bit about shadow work as well. And all of these things he kind of covers in the first session of beginner class. So I'm sitting there thinking, well, what the heck, shadow work? You know, what that sounds creepy and terrifying, and also sinner. You know, like this is still me struggling, right? In my 40s, I'm still like, you know. And he said, I talked to him about that. I said, oh, I've already been through therapy, like lots of therapy, and he goes, I don't care how much therapy you've been through. I promise you on this journey, you're going to find that there's a lot of unresolved things. It's going to be constant. And I'm like, okay, whatever. And then sure enough, he was right. But so second class came and he had us do psychometry. So, you know, I don't know how many people know about that. I'll let Dan maybe. Do you want to say what that is?
Quickly explain what it is.
Sure. Yeah.
So psychometry is the reading of. Well, there's a bigger story that I can go into, like have the normalization of mediumship and stuff in a little bit, if you like. But psychometry is about the reading of the energy in physical objects or in photographs. So the energetic imprint, we all have our own energetic signature. We all have an energetic imprint on everything that we touch or wherever we are in the world, in the universe. We leave an energetic imprint, and that energetic imprint contains information about that person. And so so if I were to give you a ring, or you were to give me a ring that belonged to someone, you think about someone's wedding ring or that they've worn every day for a great number of years, for many decades, it contains a lot of energy about that person. And you can get how old they were, when they passed, what they passed of, what they looked like, how tall were they, what their hair color was, what their eye color was. You can get all this detailed information. I mean, we take it to another level. All of us at Misfit who have been trained this way, we take it to another level. But you can get a lot of detailed information from a photograph. If you think about it's basically light energy that's bounced off a subject, and then it's been captured either on film or it's been captured digitally, and that contains the information of that person. So you can then go into, by looking at a photograph, you can get someone's name from there, you can get their how many children they had, and all kinds of information. So yeah, that was the second the second lesson.
Okay. So yeah, so on this psychometry exercise, he used one of his own family members. And again, remember, I'm the only one. There was people in our class that were actually doing tarot readings, like they were already a professional or what have you at doing it, and other people had done many circles and many. I mean, just every single person in there had experience except for me. And he had asked me to go and see what I gave, and there was one thing specific that I remember. And this is obviously before Dan and I got into any relationship. We didn't even know each other at all. And I remember his mouth going, and it was that I said, what was I said? I said, it was about, I think it was your grandfather. Was it grandfather?
Oh,
no, is it
the picture of my grandmother? That one.
Yes. And yeah. there was a part where I had said about the war.
Oh,
but I said Pearl Harbor.
That's right. It was so yeah. What was interesting was So the way spirit works is they'll give you a relevant equivalent to, if it's for like if there's a cultural difference, for example. So if it could be a food product or something like that. So because I might not be aware of an American version of it, they'll give me the British version of it, and I'll explain what that is, because they might not have. Well, they do have Kit Kats, but I'll be like, oh, it's a chocolate wafer biscuit, right? And they go, oh yeah, we have that, but it's called this. So when I was showing, there's a picture that I'd share in class, and it's of my grandmother, and it was taken on September the 13th, 1939, which is the day that Britain declared war on Germany. And so I always say that's the I hope no one who comes into class gets that, because I will be asking that question. And no one,
they're gonna be
go, what's significant about this photo being taken? Why is it taken?
That's what he was asking.
And so Jen said, I'm just getting Pearl Harbor, which is obviously that's the day that the US entered the Second World War. So it was so for me that was like, okay, they're showing her the US equivalent of the day that the World War II started.
But in the photo, you would never have been able to tell it was anything. It was like I think it was a photo of a car, wasn't it?
Yeah, that's
it was like a photo of a car and just, you know, a beautiful smiling picture of someone. So you wouldn't, and in a field, like that's it. That's all it was. So that's when I was like, okay, that was just a guess, you know. And then I started, you know, and you start doubting, and then the other things would happen where, and I really want to stress this to people, and I probably should have started with this, to say the other thing that really attracted me to Dan's class, besides that, yes, you were handsome, but that's not why I joined. I was actually swearing men off, to be specific. But yeah, to be very specific there. But what also attracted me to his class was that he was talking about anyone could develop to be a psychic medium. Anyone could. He's like, not everyone will do it right. Not everyone, you know, will do it ethically. And he's like, and do it to a level that, you know, I would like for people to do it from an evidential, which we could go into that. But and that's also what got me into it, was about him saying, it's our job to prove to the people that we've got your loved one here, not just saying, I've got your mom here. Well, how do you know I really have your mom here? And so he's like, so I'll describe it to you. I'll describe you her hair color, eye color, and things like that. But not only that, we're like, well, then what if couldn't you look them up on social media? And then Dan was saying things like, well, no, because number one, if you want to sign up with a reading from me under a fake name, I encourage you to do it. Number two, I have a technique where I can bring through anyone that you want me to bring through. So all these things, I'm like, this guy's like, I mean, he really is about proving himself, you know, like us it's our job to prove it. And I loved that, because I was like, there were so many scams going on out there. I thought, well, okay. And I loved that he said that anyone had the ability. It wasn't about ego. And that really drew me to him. And so I started, and then as class progressed, I was definitely not the top of the class by any means. I was like you said, like, I don't know, number 3 or 4, whatever, just based on where I was at, which I was thankful to be even there. But then please keep in mind, I was never seeking to be a psychic medium. That was not my thing. I came into his beginner class. I mean, I was getting paid pretty damn good money doing my career, right? So it's like that was not my intention. It was just about knowing what the hell was going on with me. That was the bottom line. And so Dan, then a few classes later, when I really knew things were happening, was when I started having experiences at home that freaked me right on out. And Dan started introducing me to some of his other colleagues out there to kind of assess me, to see where I'm at. And I thought they were going to just like assess to figure out like what was happening in my home and with me and things like that. Oh, no. His one friend, Michelle, was like, came in, and I thought she was just gonna, because Dan's like, I'm gonna hook you guys up. So she set the call, just like a Zoom call like this. And the first thing she does, she goes, hi, you know, and she goes, Dan's been telling me what's going on. And, you know, and I was like, okay. And then she goes, I've got someone with me right here. Tell me what they look like. Tell me what they died from. And I'm like, oh my God, you know, like, I was like, what? And I did. I told her, but I was like ready to throw up. I was like, oh my God. And I knew she was a really good medium, you know, and I'm like, I was I'm like, oh, and I did. I told her, and she's like, huh, you know, and then she started going in and telling what was going on. So that's when I knew this was really happening for me.
Yeah.
So sorry, it was long. I hope you edit all that out.
Thank you for sharing. I think one of the things that Dan and I have always been very insistent upon in our teaching styles is that anybody can learn. You know, I'm the same with the Akashic Records. Anybody can learn how to access their own Akashic Records. Doesn't mean they're going to want to go and be a practitioner or a reader, and that's fine. But, you know, what we do isn't a closed system. It's not, you know, just something that you're born with and then, you know, you can't ever develop it. And I think the thing with this is that in view of the fact that we are going through this expansion of consciousness, we are in a mass awakening period, you know, the more people actually start to tune into their gifts and their abilities, which, you know, a lot of the time have come through from past lifetimes, and start to trust themselves, because there is a big part that is learning that trusting yourself when you're bringing these intuitive things through, the better, as far as I'm concerned, because the noise that's out there, the confusion, everything that's distracting is taking people away from that internal development. So I'm glad that you're still doing the classes, Dan. I'm glad that you've been through it now, Jen. I'm sure you're probably now teaching as well.
I am. Yes.
Yeah, so, and that's just helping people. And, you know, like you say, people don't necessarily have to go into your class to learn to be a professional. You know, that in itself will be like the Akashic Records. It'll be a calling if they feel that calling, but they can still get so much from it to understand themselves, to understand their clair senses, to understand, okay, I've had this experience, what's happened to me, you know. So I think anyone who's listening, you don't have to sit there and think, okay, I want to be a professional psychic medium. But if you're wanting to start developing those skills, or if you're having these experiences, Dan's beginner class would be a great place for you to start, so that you can start to let that unfold in a way that is ethical, in a way that is a safe space, and it is a way where you're going to be able to pick the brains of people who have the experience of going through that. So thank you so much for sharing that.
Oh, that's all right. I mean, I think just going back to your original question as well about what we do. I mean, a lot of how I started Misfit also relates to what we've talked about as well, because I when I mean I knew I knew I was going to be a medium. I had to go into development and training um and then I thought, do you know what? I'm going to be the first psychic medium on social media. And then when I went up, I looked on, there was hundreds of them. I'm going, oh no, okay. How do I differentiate myself? How are people going to know that they should go with me for a reading? Because I was on my own at that point. I'm going, how do people know to go with me rather than someone else? And I remember I had some conversations with my higher self on that journey, but also when I had my Akashic Records reading with you, it was about my purpose. And I remember asking, why have I been chosen to do this? If I have been chosen to do it, why am I doing? Because, you know, when I'm developing, there's people who are on the courses that I'd done that were doctors and nurses and teachers, and people already found themselves in a natural position of care and nurture. Yes. And, you know, end of life carers and so on and so on. And I'm like, I'm just some guy who's worked in advertising for 20 years. I've been selling crap to people they don't really need. Why am I doing this? And the answer came back, precisely because you've been working in advertising. I had to think about that for a bit. And I went, okay, advertising is about changing perception. It's about changing perception of a product or a service to make it relevant in people's lives. And I was like, well, mediumship it's got a perception problem. Absolute perception problem. There's so many fakes and so many cranks out there that you know, they talk about it being a gift, and which it's not. It's something that everybody has, or if it is a gift, then everybody's got it, right? But it was about how do I make this how do I separate myself from everybody else and show them that this is a normal thing? How do I make it accessible for everybody, yeah, and normalize the whole thing? And you have the kind of same approach in your own frequency, which is about, you know, I think we often throw away the term grounded, too easily, because people don't really know what that means, right? It's like, yeah, it's good to have a grounded approach, and we seem a bit down to earth about it. It's about not getting lost down the rabbit warren, right? Being aware of it and learning from it, but also coming back, keeping one foot on the ground, making sure that people don't feel scared or nervous or unsure or uncertain. It's about making people feel, or helping people to feel, that it's okay to do this. It's okay to go on this voyage of exploration and feel comfortable doing it, and feel reassured and safe and confident in, and because ultimately it will grow your confidence. And there's that initial moment of surrender where you have to kind of like let go a little bit, right? But it's making sure that you've pegged your knicker elastic onto the ground, so you can pin your way back, right? So it's and that's a really important part of it. And I think by staying grounded and by like having the conversations that we would have on our Instagram lives, and showing people that it's not just rainbows and unicorns and what, goodness knows what. This is real stuff, and this is stuff that can actually help you in your human life. And it's important that you live your human life. It's not just about escaping and going off into a spiritual version of reality. This is about being in the here and now. And that's why, like, with our style of reading, it's evidential. So it's about proving, as Jen was saying, proving that your loved one is there, right? And they're around you. But it's also the style of readings that we do and that we teach is about giving people information that helps them in the day-to-day, like the here and now, not just, oh, your spirit guides are around you, which sounds lovely, right? But if Beryl, who's 82, has lost her husband Jack, who was 86, she doesn't need to know about spirit guides, right? She doesn't need to know about angels or anything like that. It might be nice for her to hear. What she needs to know is he okay? How's he doing on the other side? And what does she need to do about the life insurance policy or whatever that's come through, right? So that's the kind of information that we get through from spirit, because you set the intention. Intention is such a powerful thing of how you want to work with spirit, and you can get that level of information coming through. Also, in terms of the level of accuracy, because we have a unique way of working that will give us that level of accuracy and detail. But for me, that was so much more important than when you see psychics out there that, you get the Tim Pot TikTok mediums that go, oh yeah, I've got your great grandma here. I hate to say it, but I don't even know I can't remember my great grandma's name, right? So I don't know how I'd validate. My mum would kill me for saying that, right? But I can't, I can't remember. I remember meeting her, but I couldn't tell you anything about her. So if someone were to say to me, I've got your great grandma here, I'd be like, can you get me someone else? I'm really sorry, but I wouldn't be able to validate anything, right?
Yes.
Apart from her being from Scotland or something, but I can't, right? And so it's important that we stick to kind of like the four main generations, either your same generational level, children, parents, or grandparents. That's it. Because then, unless someone was particularly close to their great grandparents, so for someone to say, "Oh, I've got your grandmother here," well, I don't really know an awful lot about, and then just go into a message, there's no value in the reading.
We had that last night on the live, where someone asked to bring their grandmother through. I immediately said, okay, would this be your maternal grandmother? And she goes, you could bring her through, but I don't know a lot about her, because again, we give you the choice of who you'd like for us to bring through. And she said, well, I don't know a lot about it. And then I said, well, if it's okay, was it your paternal grandmother then that you wanted to? And she said yes. And I said, if it's okay, let's go with her, because you can validate.
Yeah,
that's really important to us. I mean, unless they said, well, I just really want to talk to them, I don't know a lot about it, we'll still find ways to be able to prove to you that this is truly them, because they're going to give us information about you that no one would know, that's not on social media, and is not one of those, you're on the right path and you just need to get out more in the woods. That's not the kind of stuff we say. But yeah, sorry, I didn't mean to. I just thought that just happened last night.
It's a really good example. And so I think that the difference here is it's not just getting a reading, because if you get a reading from your average psychic or medium, if you were to tell someone else about it, they would say, oh, a psychic told me this, or a psychic told me that, right? And then it's wishy-washy, and the other person might just poo-poo it and go, oh, do you know what? Well, why would you listen to that, old cobblers? When you can actually anchor it and ground it in a particular person, right?
Yeah.
Then it becomes different. My dad told me this, right? The psychic might have, or medium might have relayed the information, but it's come from your dad, your mum, your paternal grandmother. It's come from your sister. It could be from your child, from your sibling, from your spouse, but it's come from somewhere, and we've proven to a point where they not only feel, because the message is quite often it's what people come for a reading for, but when it's grounded in the actual person. So it works on multiple levels, because if we can prove to them that that person is around by giving them a detailed description of the person that they wanted to hear from, or we just work the traditional way and see who comes through for them, whichever they want to do. But most people come to us now for like, actually, I really want to hear. I've had readings before. My mum's never come through. Can you help me? And we'll go, yeah, we'll just find her energy around you and bring her through. And so you bring them through and you give them that reassurance, and the evidence then that comes through after the identifiable stage, we get the evidence, and people just go, and it can be the craziest thing or the simplest thing, right? Like the color of a duvet, as it was for a reading yesterday, and it's like, oh my god, right? And it was like, yeah, they talked about, that was one that you had actually, wasn't it? We started doing dual readings now as well, where we tap into the same spirit and we get different information coming through.
Oh, how cool.
It's very, very,
it's really cool.
Yeah.
We just started doing this a lot more, and people have been asking for it. And it's, yeah, you taught me how to connect with the same spirit. And now, which you'll go into more about Karen, JC, Wendy, and other students that are coming through, they can do the same thing now. We can all get to the same spirit. Like he's taught us how to make sure, which is so cool. But keep going. Sorry.
No, that's all right. And I mean, it works because it's kind of like you get. We were reading for two people. It was a mother and daughter, and they'd lost both their father, this lady's son, and the young lady's brother, and then it was her mother as well. So like we had all three spirits come through, and sometimes it was, you're giving them descriptive information. Sometimes it's like, to look at the lady that we're reading for, the mum, you would never have known that she was someone who rode a motorbike, but Jen went, oh, he's telling me that you'd borrow his motorbike and you're riding his motorbike. She's like, yeah. But how would we know that? So some people just kind of like, they forget that you're just, it's almost like them, right?
This is just like last year, and she's in her 50s or something, and she's like,
that's quite, it's not just the fact that he had a motorbike, but the fact she used to borrow the motorbike, which is pretty specific.
Yeah.
And she was like, yeah. But then it was like, so it wasn't that was the impressive thing for her. It was that, he damaged the duvet and tried to hide it or something. And Jen went, oh, was it a green one? She went, oh my God. And that was the thing that got her. It was a green duvet.
Not the motorbike. Right?
Yeah.
We figured out how he passed. We figured out all this. She was just like, yeah, that's right. That's right. Then
some people do that.
The duvet.
And you think some of the stuff that we go, oh, wow, I'm so happy that bit of evidence came through. They can be a bit like, I was reading for someone not that long ago, and I brought through, it was her grandmother, and she said, what was it? Oh yeah, I'm going through the motions, and then suddenly her grandmother said to me, Sunday lunch, right? And I said, your grandmother's just told me I need to tell you Sunday lunch. And this lady who's having a reading on her phone said, oh yeah, well, I've just had a notification from my my other half, who's just asked me if I wanted to go out for Sunday lunch. And I'm like, but I can't see that.
So you're
literally like, as the notification. So she's telling me information that she's there with her right now. And I'm going, and she's like, and I'm going, that's a wonderful thing, right? And she's going, meh. But it wasn't that. It was like, I don't know, like a bunny rabbit with a particular that she used to have as a kid, or something, with a ribbon around its neck. That was the blow away moment for her. So what? It's different for other people.
Oh, I know. But I have to interject one more. You can cut this out, Susan, if you want to, but I just got to tell you. So the one that gets me every time that we tell Dan is people come to us too because they know they're going to get something a bit different. It's not about us tooting our own horn. It's just about that's what we pride ourselves on, is knowing that. For me, I'm still getting my head around this all the time. And I'm doing health readings as well, right? Like in addition, which Dan can explain about that. But because he would probably, when you met him probably a couple of years ago, he would have probably told you hell no to that. But for him to teach anyone to be doing anything with that. But the one that gets me is like when there's people that come to us, they trust us, they know what we're going to do, But then you get and I'm sure you get the same with clients, but there's that 1%. So Dan, I mean, I've had some of these too, but Dan had this one client. He literally picked up like, because she was from a different culture. He picked up the name, like it was completely like, I forget. Do you remember what the
Or was it the Indian lady with the?
Yes. And so then Dan starts telling her all this stuff. And what was it specifically you said to her? And she goes, all he's doing is talking about himself.
Oh,
That's
that was
what
it.
she said.
Oh, that was it. No, it was the lady who was, yeah, her husband.
Yeah, this is
I forgot about that. Yeah,
it was
her
dang
husband.
good evidence.
And I got that. Yeah, I've got that. Not just that he was from Cyprus, but from Turkish Cyprus, so a specific part of Cyprus, right? And then there was names and the fact that there was this story about she'd lost her engagement ring. It was in the footwell of the car and all this.
He
Stuff.
got all of it. It was so intense.
It was one of the most detailed readings I given, and she just like in the middle of it just went, "Oh, he's just talking about himself."
That's what she
and I'm
said.
like, "Well, I'm trying to prove to you that he's here." Yeah,
but she was mad. Like, let's talk about me.
Yeah.
You know. Yeah. Sorry, I had to tell you about that because I just love that story.
I'd forgotten about that. Yeah, but yeah, so we got the identifiable bit, then we got the evidence bit, and we've got these funny stories about different things that ring that we think, oh, that's a really powerful bit of evidence. I'm really pleased I got that through. And what versus what people say. But then it's the message, and the message is the important thing. Now, a lot of mediums out there will, because most people want, it's not just the proof that their loved one's around, but when they do get that proof, it's like a weight lifted off the shoulders. There's a little jaw drop moment. There's a little tear in the eye. I always ask one of my spirit guides, Carl, who is he's a cowboy, but he's German, and he helps me with my wit and humor, which I find ironically hilarious because Germans aren't supposed to have a sense of humor. So they're playing a trick with me there, right? But he comes through, and I don't know when it's coming, but I'll just get this. Oh, I've been told I need to tell you this. And the person that I'm reading for will quite often burst out laughing and go, oh my. And I love that because it means it's because readings can be a little bit somber sometimes. So to bring a little peak of happiness and a nice memory in there, it's not just about remembering them passing, but remembering that they were once alive and they were an amazing person and they gave you so much love and enjoyment. But yeah, getting to the message having resonance, and it needs to be held in the day to day. There are so many mediums out there that will just say, oh, you're on the right path, right? As Jen was talking about before. And some people, the danger of doing that, because there's an enormous amount of responsibility being a medium. If someone hasn't tapped in properly and they're just thinking, oh, I'm just going to say something positive, because that can't be harmful at all, can it? Right? If they haven't tapped in properly and they haven't properly connected with someone, the person who you're reading for may be thinking about unaliving themselves. And if you tell them they're on the right path, they might think, right, I'll go and do it. Right. Yeah. And that's so there's a huge amount of responsibility that goes with what we do. So it's important that we get it right. And it's important. That's why, the teaching is, it's enjoyable. The classes are enjoyable, but they're also very strict and very ethical, because that's what's going to help us stand apart from other mediums as well. And the whole point is it's like we're pulling in different directions. There's us, and then there's a lot of other mediums that we trust as well. But
like
there's
Scott.
A lot of, definitely like Scott. Spiritual Scott. Really he's fantastic. And it's like, but the rest of it are like pulling in a different direction. We're trying to normalize this and build trust, right? That's the whole point of creating the Misfit brand, was to show a badge of trust that people knew that they could either get a good reading or good teaching, right? And rely on that. And as you pointed out, when you're talking about when Jen reads, we always hold ourselves accountable. If we don't get something right, we don't try and make it fit. We go, well, hang on a minute, that's on me. I must have misinterpreted that, right? Because that's all it is. Spirit, it's not that spirit's wrong. It's not that they can't be read or whatever. It's the fact that we've just, as a medium, we are still human at the end of the day. We're going to get things wrong. So, or misinterpret things or whatever. So we hold ourselves accountable for that. But it's about helping people to build trust, to show people that it's possible to have a world where two people can sit in a park or on a bus and they can talk to each other. One can say to the other one, you know what, I had a reading last night. And instead of the other one going, you nutter, they go, well, that's cool. Did anyone interesting come through? Like they've had it, like I phoned my mum up last night. It needs to be as normal as that. That's where we need to be. Whereas other mediums tend to be by calling it a gift, right? And I think I think people do truly believe that sometimes. Oh, I'm gifted. I have a gift, and I can tell if someone else has a gift. Everybody has it. We are spirit inside a human body. All right, we don't become spirit when we pass. We're already a spirit, and as spiritual beings, we already have these abilities, right? And I know you often refer to a spiritual awakening as spiritual remembering, right? Because it's just about remembering what it is. We've just got our humanness, our nerves, our anxieties, our worries, our ego, everything else gets in the way of us communicating with other spirit, right? Because we're here to have a different experience. However, it's that prevents us from connecting with spirit, directly. And the learning is almost about, it's undoing, taking off all this stuff that you've become as a human, just temporarily while you're working. You've got to go back to it and go back to your your real inverted commas life, right? But it's important to remember that yeah, we are spiritual beings and we can connect to other spiritual beings, and everybody's capable of doing that. So, and I think that's the thing. Some mediums will see that, old school mediums or whatever, will see that as oh, that's a threat to my income, because there's, that means there's more. The more mediums there are, the less money there is for me or whatever. And then they're in it for the wrong bit. They're in it for the wrong reason.
Well, also there's billions of people out there all over the world, and our technology obviously provides anyone the access to be able to read for people anywhere around the world, and there's plenty of people out there to read for. It's not a competition like that, but it's like I know, like, to me, and that's also, I'm a little bit more biased because Dan's told me all about you, but you're one of the best in the business, like that's what I know. But I also know from what we just talked about before we started this podcast about, and you talking about it in this podcast, about constantly wanting to learn. Constantly, I know about you meditating for 2 hours every day. I mean, like, Dan was telling me all about this. So those are the things I do know about you. That's the same. Like, every time I get something wrong in a reading, I'm really upset. It's not because of how I looked. It's because I literally feel like, did I just put some doubt in that person's head that their loved one's not here? And it tears me up, because that's my job, is to make sure that they get comfort, they get closure. And when I screw something up like that for me, which I know in the spiritual world they say it's not necessarily a screw up, but for me, I'm like, no, it's a screw up for me, and I'll take it. But it's like, I think when you talk about anyone can do this, it's kind of like people who, anyone has the potential to be an Olympic swimmer or an Olympic runner, right? And even if someone has, lost their legs, right? They can still go into a different kind of Olympics and do it. But it's the will, it's the motives. What's your motive for wanting to do this? Because I firmly believe if you're in it for the wrong reasons, it will show in your readings. And it does. Absolutely. Time after time after time again. And I will zip my lips on some of those people that we all know drives me absolutely bonkers, because they hurt people. I mean, they truly hurt people out there, and you can see their motives. And it's a difference between people just maybe not giving a brilliant reading, and that's okay, but their intentions are good, versus someone who has very destructive, don't care what happens to the person in front of me when I'm reading for them. I'm just going to say whatever makes a big show and gets me the most attention.
And it's all about intention, as Dan was saying before. Your intention behind your service is the most important thing. And when your genuinely intention focus is on the person that you're reading for, whichever type of reading you're giving them, you're always going to want to give them all the information that you can to make sure that you are channeling through the best information for them. And that requires us as readers to keep checking in with ourselves. Am I the clearest channel that I can be? Where's my energy at going into this reading? Is there something going on in the back of my mind that I maybe just need to stick on a piece of paper and put to one side for when I'm done, so that I can be fully present, fully engaged, fully open for this reading to come through? And that's where I think the teaching becomes important, especially when you're teaching people to read for other people. It's not just about the method. You can learn a method from a book, but it's all about the holding them accountable. What are the ethics? What's the process that we need to make sure that we're in the best mindset? Okay, well, if you've had a reading and maybe you've got some stuff through that you weren't sure of. Let's talk about that. It's not, oh, you're a bad reader. It's okay, well, what do we need to work on here? What else was going on? What's going on energetically for you at that time? Is there maybe some information coming through in a way that you don't know about? And that's our job as teachers, to help people work all that side of things out.